November, last month, I've actually finished this notebook. The best things are already in the internet. The best teachers are already in the internet. There are lectures literally from prestigious school, not just in the country, but around the world. There's lectures from Harvard. There's lectures from Princeton. There's lectures from Oxford. There's lectures from MIT, and they're all free and they're all in the internet. A lot of graduates graduate and they feel like they have not learned enough from school, and that's because they probably have become someone who's just compliant into what the school system is giving them. They just become someone who just accepted what the school curriculum has for them and not really explored beyond school. And I always stumble on my words. I have a lot of filler words. Maybe my hair is funny that day, just like today. Now I'm slowly getting the clarity that doesn't really matter. Whether I did good or bad, I should just post them because it's all part of the process. And it's nice for everybody to be able to see that it's not always like a good talk. It's not always like a great talk. Sometimes I do make mistakes. Sometimes I do fail. Basically, this is the very first note, the very first page on this notebook that I've been using for 2 years now. Not only for the Clarity Project podcast, but just notes in general. Hello everybody, my name is Carl Umali, and welcome to episode number 27 of the Clarity Project podcast. For today's episode, we are here at, what's the name of this place again? I'm just gonna put it right here in the description because I forgot what the name of this place is. For today's episode, and I think this is gonna be a little bit different from previous episodes because in previous episodes, I used to use this notebook, which I have here in my hand, and I used to read the notes in it, and then I used to reflect on the notes in this notebook. Right? I've got it all finished up with all of the notes all the way to the end. As you can see here, right? It's all the way to the end. There's notes in it, and I've completely finished this. And I believe that it would just be fitting, for this episode, for me to talk about this notebook alone, not the notes in it specifically, but just this notebook alone in terms of note-taking, in terms of how I got started, when I started, why I started. I think that's going to be a little bit of an interesting episode, albeit it's going to be a little bit different of an episode from the previous episodes of the podcast. So let me try and look at my notebook here. So here's the first page of the notebook. I don't know if you can see that because it's too far away, and I had my focus on manual and I had it right here, but I guess you could see that. So I started this and I actually signed it way back in September 9, 2022. So that's around 2 years ago when I started taking notes from this notebook. At that time, I think I was late second year college student, if not early third year college student. I'm not quite too sure about that, but yeah, at that time I was still a college student. And fast forward to the day, I'm already about a year into after graduation. What's interesting about this notebook is that I didn't notice this. I actually just noticed this recently. Is that it actually says in its front, it says the inspiration to life, to write down the inspiration of the moment. It says here in the actual notebook itself. I think I got this notebook from Mr. DIY for 230-ish, 250, maybe even 300. Not that too sure about it. But basically, that's the price on it. I want to share to you the very first note that I've ever took in this notebook, which I never revealed ever in any of the podcast episodes. And it's actually about this. It's about the Rotaract Club, as you can see here. I don't know if you can actually see that, but it's here, right? And it's from the same date as I signed it. It's from September 9, 2022. If you can see that, I don't know if you can see that. But it's for the Rotaract Club of Chaong, Transforming New Gen. And this is for the mental health webinar series that they were doing at that time for the Rotaract, right? They called it Academics, Conflict, and Transformation. And at that time, this was my very first speaking gig. Well, technically, it's not my first speaking gig, but it was my first speaking gig when it comes to the Clarity Project. Let me just my exposure here for a little bit because it's getting a little bit dark. There we go. So that was my very first talk that I did for the Clarity Project podcast. And I think that's also a little bit of a nice trivia because on last November, I actually did two talks in the name of the Clarity Project for two universities. Well, actually, one is a state university. It's my second time coming there for Batangas State University, JPIIE. They're an amazing club. They invited me last year and they invited me this year again last month for this time for their flagship event, which is the IE Week number 4 that they were having last month, and it was a successful event. I really enjoyed being there again. They've always been so professional. They've always been someone who's willing to go above and beyond when it comes to communication, and the after event relationship that they were able to have with me is just super phenomenal. So for them, I was able to do a different kind of a topic, a different kind of a talk from last year, because last year I was able to talk to them about motivation of some sort. They were a motivational speaker. It's more on motivational side because it was the start of the school year and it was for their school orientation. So I had to be able to bring everybody in the right mindset, in the right headspace to start the year. Fast forward to this year, I'm now invited to talk about the ripple effect. So it's not just about what they can do for themselves. It's not about what kind of motivation that they can have for themselves. This year, the kind of topic that I did for them is something that is going to go beyond them, right? The ripple effect and the effects that they're going to have beyond where they are. Because the thing about the ripple effect is that it's the kind of an effect that grows much bigger, much farther, and much larger than the initial effect that was done. So I really enjoyed bringing that kind of an experience to them, bringing that kind of a clarity to them. So if I would just like read some of the notes that I did here and let me read them to you. And by the way, there's like a lot of kids here and there's like a Christmas song that's going on in the background, but I do believe in this mic that is gonna cancel most of it. But yeah, basically this is the very first note, the very first page on this notebook that I've been using for 2 years now, not only for the Clarity Project podcast, but just notes in general. I actually have notes here that I've taken as a student. So I've actually used this as a college notebook. So some of the notes here are actually from lectures and from lessons that I sat through during the pandemic and during the face-to-face classes, albeit there were just a few on the eclipse of my college days. And as you can see here, let me read some of it, right? It says here, Carl Umali, speaker for academic, crisis, stress, and everything else. It was actually headed by Abigail C. Samson, a school mate of mine at that time from senior high school. I don't know, like the way that I looked at it is that, yeah, we had some conversation, but we're not really close. So I was really surprised when she chatted me about it, when she talked to me about it, and if I would want to be a part of their event and actually talk to them, not as Carl O'Malley previously, as someone who talked about just about anything, mostly about filmmaking. But this is the first time that I was invited to actually represent the Clarity Project as the founder of the Clarity Project and actually share the kind of in that kind of a topic. And it's been a really nice first experience for me. It was a surreal feeling because at that time I was already doing the Clarity Project for about a year or a couple of years already, and to see that some people actually liked it enough to actually invite me to talk about it more to their organization was such a validating feeling for me at that time, because when you post videos such as this one, and at that time I was really big on Instagram carousels. I did a little bit of an Instagram live, but I was not doing videos for the Clarity Project at that time. I was not doing a podcast. A podcast didn't exist that time. At the same time, I didn't do any kind of a TikTok video at that time. I didn't have a TikTok account. And what's interesting about what we did back then was that they actually gave me like bullet points and numbers in using and what I'm going to be talking about, or at least the kinds of questions that I have to answer throughout the whole webinar, throughout the whole speaking engagement. And the number one thing that they wanted to get answered for, will I excel at my exams considering that the lectures are held online while the exams are on ground? So it's kind of getting a little bit of dark. So let me just go to a different place and let me continue this podcast somewhere else. I know it sucks, you gotta stop it, but in the editing, you won't even notice the stoppage. So yeah, all right. So let's continue. So we are now at the restaurant. I forgot what the name of this place is. Let me try and look at signages nearby. If there's like a signages here, maybe their branding is here somewhere that I could read. But so far, I can't see it. Around, yeah, I was like reading the kind of the pointers, the notes that they gave me, and the kinds of the questions that they want answered when I stopped recording just a little bit earlier. Through the magic of editing, it was like a couple of seconds ago, but in reality, that's just like a couple of minutes ago. But yeah, the number two question that they had for me is, what if this is not really the course that I wanted? Would it be easier if I took the course I really liked? So that's the number two thing that I had to answer during that first webinar that I did. The number three problem is, or the number three question, sorry, is what about my schedule? How will I be able to manage my time? Do they have the same worries as mine? And then I don't know if this is like included on the questions themselves, but I put in actually number 4 and number 5. And number 4 is the hybrid setup, and the number 5 is time management. And now if you could try and listen to just those kind of questions that they had about 2 years ago with the Clarity Project, and with the kinds of questions that they really needed as a student. And if you forgot about the pandemic happened, right? And right now, it's almost like it's a distant dream, almost like it didn't happen. And it's crazy because it was only about 4 years ago, depending on where you are in terms of the lockdown restrictions, in terms of how you live, in terms of your community and your school. But that's what this has been able to do. And this was the problem at that time. So it's really a nice kind of a time capsule, if you will, because it really captures the questions of the time, the plights of the time, the zeitgeist of the time. At that time, they were really like talking about the pandemic. They were really like talking about the face-to-face classes and online classes. Nowadays, online classes almost is completely gone again, just like when there was no pandemic. Nowadays, online classes are made in order to like do something when there's like a typhoon or something. But back then, it was the norm. Back then, the online classes was the norm, and the face-to-face classes were the kinds of the things that you did when there's no much restriction anymore. So that's kind of crazy. Now let me go into the next page, and I'm gonna like flip it. I know it's off screen, you can't see it because I actually have a mic now that I'm holding, so I can't actually flip it as efficiently and as visually appealing. But let's see. So here are the notes that I have for the first page on the back page. So this is it. I actually says how many hours you work doesn't equal your output. And I said that ask why enough times and you'll either get the answers. And these are the answers that you'll either get. It's either that you get I don't know, or I know, and wow, now I know. The next, and let me read it, it says that schools was for daycare. It functions as a giver of credentials. I'm not really sure if I shared that during like I'm not really sure if I shared that during the webinar itself, because I might have felt that it would be controversial of some sort, or was not perfect for the topic, because they were like each and every one of them, most of them are students. So I don't know if I said that schools is for daycare and it functions for something that you would get credentials for would be easily adopted or would be easily understood, especially at that time in 2022. And yeah, and I actually shared this other this other lesson, and I said the best teachers are on the internet. Everything best is on the internet. And I actually made a reel out of this. I actually made a TikTok out of this, where I am talking about like the kind of students that were annoyed or pissed or having all of these problems or having these plights when it comes to, I can't believe that the school system is not teaching us everything that we should know. The thing and the kind of thesis to that is that if they have a problem, if their school or their teachers are not the best or not giving them the best lectures, not giving them the best lessons, not giving them the best curriculum, or that every time that they have to study something that they feel like they're not going to use ever, every time that they feel like they're studying something that is not really in the major of their field, or they're studying a minor subjects and they really hate those minor subjects, because usually it's those minor subjects that actually get in the way on their academic goals. Maybe they want to be a dean's lister, maybe they want to be a cum laude or to have a Latin honor to their name. And here's the thing, and here's my thesis around that, is that the best things are already in the internet. The best teachers are already in the internet. They're all over the internet. There are lectures literally from prestigious school, not just in the country, but around the world. There's lectures from Harvard. There's lectures from Princeton. There's lectures from Oxford. There's lectures from MIT, and they're all free and they're all in the internet. If you try and look at the professional field beyond the academic field, you could also see that. You could see a lot of professors that have since gone from their university, and the likes of Jordan Peterson and the likes of Andrew Huberman and other kind of experts that are already now in the field, and they all have a podcast now. There are, at the very least, they're now being invited into these podcasts. And so the knowledge that you are really seeking, the knowledge that you're really hungry for, is all over the internet. So if you're already if you already realize that most of the things that you're learning in school you're never gonna use anyways, if now you've realized and that you're pissed because you have to learn all of these things, then I don't get why you're not actually learning the things that you think you need. I don't get why you're scrolling to social media rather than learning from all of these people, because that's the reality of life right now. It's either you take what they give you at face value and expect it's gonna give you a really concrete kind of a cookie cutter system that's really going to prepare you in the real world. Of course, we know that's not actually true. A lot of graduates graduate and they feel like they have not learned enough from school. And that's because they probably have become someone who's just compliant into what the school system is giving them. They just become someone who just accepted what the school curriculum has for them and not really explored beyond school. So yeah, that's just a little bit about that. And let me read the next passage here, which says, if you're going to go to the university, learn the things that you can't learn by yourself. Why? Because most things you can already learn on your own. So I guess this is an added point to what I was talking about earlier. If you're going to go to the university, you should learn the things that you cannot learn anywhere else. So it's not something that you can learn from a book. It's not something that you could watch from a YouTube video. It's not something that you can watch from a podcast. It's not something that you could read from an article elsewhere. It's really something that you have to experience as a student in college. And of course, there's like a big corollary to this. At that time, it was still new. But by this time in 2024, you probably heard it a bunch of times. And that is, schools are still relevant, especially on the really professional fields like medicine, business, law, and engineering. But even beyond that, a lot of business people, really great business people, are actually saying that probably you don't need business school to succeed in business. You have people like Elon Musk, who doesn't even require that you have a college degree if you're going to join the SpaceX program. It's just a matter of skills. If you can really do it, then you're hired. If you can really do it, then you qualify for the job. It's not about credentials, and they're trying to mitigate that, and they're trying to look at the person for their skills, for their actual skills, rather than what's written on paper. So if I'm going to continue, this is the second page, and it says STEM disciplines. So yeah, I actually talked about this a little bit earlier, but let me read it further, right? So access to tools, people, discipline, systems. So STEM disciplines, that's if you went into STEMs and if you went to STEM kind of a field, then yeah, school is still important. But if try to widen your horizon, there are a lot of careers now that if you try and really think about it, you don't really need a degree for that. If you try and really think about hard enough, then you realize that you don't really have to go to university for that. And this is actually just kind of a quick disclaimer, and I actually included it here because it might seem like I'm pessimistic about school, that I don't believe in school. But the truth is, it's not that I don't believe in school. It's just that we are now seeing that the school system is very inefficient. And at the same time, if you really want to be a learner, if you really want to be the best person that you could be to prepare yourself for a specific field, you got to be able to learn from sources and resources outside of school. And it says here, in this passage right here, I don't know if you could see that, you can't learn everything from your backyard, but the list is not that long. So it says here, right? So you might be someone who's like a really hater of a school. You might be someone who really hates school, and the idea of school really sickens you. But the thing is about that lecture and about the kinds of points that I was making, it's not supposed to be kind of a hate speech towards school. It's the opposite, right? Because it says here, I was very true to this. I was very aware of it. I had the cognizance to be able to put this note here that yes, while there are things that you can learn on your own, but that list is not really that long. So you do need things to be able to learn from, whether that be from your school, whether that be from a mentor, whether that be from an expert, whether that be from your family or your friend or whatever. And here's the last sentence that I have here on the second page of this notebook, which is, every college degrees have different ROIs. Putting someone on the wrong path will cost them decades. And so I actually made like a doodle here, a kind of a portrait, a kind of a doodle portrait that I had here. I don't know if you could recognize who this is, but that's Naval Ravikant. And so all of the things that I've talked about is primarily from him. So hat tip. So all the credit to him for those kind of ideas. So as I was developing this kind of philosophy at that time, I was listening to what he was talking about. I was really looking into his kind of philosophy and what he thought about it. And then I kind of put it against my own philosophy, and then I brought in my own philosophy from that. So because that's the way that you should learn, right? You should learn from everybody, and then you should look at your own philosophy, and then you should look at other people, and then really mix and match the kinds of philosophy and what really works and what really is the truth. So it's a matter of truth seeking. It's a matter of knowing what really works for you. So this last passage, it talks about, having like the wrong degree. And sometimes most of us, especially here in the Philippines, we are almost forced, right? For the lack of a better term, we are almost forced into picking a career that is practical. We are almost forced into picking a college degree and going into a college program that we don't really want. And the only reason that we wanted it is because there's like a promise attached to it that if you graduate as a professional in this field, that you're going to be rich, that you're going to have the money afterwards. And so that's really like a really tough decision for everybody, because not everybody has the choice to choose whatever field or whatever college program that they want. Not everybody has that liberty to be able to choose what is it that is in their heart. Not everybody has that freedom. And if so, if you're somebody who has that freedom, know that you're blessed. Know that you're someone who's really living the life that most people is not going to have, or you're living the life that most people didn't get. This is the kind of things that they're envious about you, because you're able to pursue a college degree or a college program that you really like. And so I also talked about that during my first talk for the Rotaract Club, and I go in depth to that, albeit I don't know if there's like a recording through that. If I could find the recording, I probably would put it on YouTube and just like post it, and so that you could see the kind of growth process that I had as a speaker, not only as a speaker for the Clarity Project podcast, but as a speaker in general. And more and more today, I'm trying to look for the archive of the talks that I made throughout the years, and I'm trying to discreetly post them one by one. I don't know if you've seen some of them yet, but they're just in the playlist on my YouTube. Now I actually now the cat's out of the bag. But basically, that's a kind of a spoiler. All right, should I say that? Should I not say that? All right, so pretend that you didn't hear that, but they're all over my social media account, and I'm now secretly and one by one trying to upload them, because at the end of the day, yes, these things are embarrassing. Most of them are kind of like they suck, right? They're not the best quality, and I always like stumble on my words. I have a lot of filler words. Maybe my hair is funny that day, just like today, and these things, sometimes when I don't post them because I feel like it's not my best self. Sometimes I don't post them because at that time I felt like it's embarrassing. It's embarrassing because I know that it could have done better, but it didn't. But now I'm slowly getting the clarity that that doesn't really matter. Whether I did good or bad, I should just post them because it's all part of the process. And it's nice for everybody to be able to see that it's not always like a good talk. It's not always like a great talk. Like sometimes I do make mistakes. Sometimes I do fail. Sometimes there's overlapping in terms of, oh, I should have explained that better. Oh, there's like a better explanation for this. Like, oh, I should have gone more deeper into that. Oh, I should have made that a little bit more clearer. So all of these things contribute to who I am today and who I'm going to be in the future. So I guess in looking back, it's just like a really nice experience to be able to see the growth that I have as a speaker and the growth that as I have for in terms of my philosophy in terms of the Clarity Project and my philosophy in general in terms of life. And here is the back page of that second page. And I don't know if again you can see that. I'm sorry if I keep repeating if you can see it or not. I had this at the lowest aperture, so I'm not really sure which is on focus or not, because sometimes you might think that you're in focus, but the truth is you're not in focus. But here's what I did, right? I don't know if you can read that. It says, The Elephant in the Room, Rotary Club of Chaong Transforming New Gen, Online Learning, Infinite, Learn from Yale, Wharton, Harvard, movie directors, experts. Google it, no more memorization, school is linear, foundational knowledge. So, wow, I didn't even realize that I actually put it in here. And I've actually discussed this earlier without even realizing that it's actually in the notes, because this is the first time that I'm rereading it again with you guys. So it's kind of crazy that my philosophy and that kind of a knowledge still stuck, because it's almost like I had clairvoyance. It's almost like I predicted what I'm going to say, because the thing that I was saying about schools, about Harvard, about Oxford, it's the same thing here. Albeit I had a different kind of an example. I said Yale, I said Wharton, I said Harvard, I said movie directors and experts. So yeah, one of the podcasts that I really enjoyed listening to is like, or content that I enjoy listening to in YouTube are the kinds of contents that movie directors are having, the kinds of lectures that they were having at that time. I like listening to Jordan Peele. I like listening to Quentin Tarantino. I like listening to everybody, Martin Scorsese. They're phenomenal filmmakers, and I really wanted to learn from them. And hearing their lectures and hearing their opinion on things really brings me the kinds of perspective that I needed at that time as a filmmaker. And those kinds of lessons is like really amazing to be able to share that kind of a virtual space, albeit it's virtual, with them and learn from them firsthand, if you want to think about it that way. So yeah, the third one is here says Google it, no more memorization. So I think that I also said this during the talk itself in terms of Googling it, right? Because the Google really has eliminated memorization. It really has eliminated the need for memorization. It's all about understanding now. So if you're a student or if you're early in your career, it's really important for you to really see the difference between understanding something and just memorizing something, knowing the definition of something versus actually learning the something on a fundamental level. And that's why I said here on the very end of it, it says foundational knowledge. So it's really important for you to be able to understand something on a fundamental level, on a foundational kind of a level. And so that the more grounded you are fundamentally, the deeper that you can go into it and the higher that you can go in terms of the levels into it. So yeah, that's actually the end of it. And the next one is already on 9/11, 2022, September 11, 2022, which has a completely different note. And I think that would be a podcast on itself, maybe in the future, I don't know. But basically, that's what it is. So yeah, shout out to this notebook. I finished it last month. Again, I started on September of 2022. It's now finally finished. I had a lot of experiences in this. There's like a lot in this. in terms of the notes, in terms of the Clarity project, me as a student, and not just notes for content. There are actual notes here that are just for myself, which makes this a very personal notebook for me. So yeah, I guess that's a podcast. If you watch as a whole or you watch it in snippets, I'd like to be able to thank you, and I'll see you again on the next one. And oh, by the way, did that make sense? Then follow for more. Thank you, and bye-bye.